This video is going to demonstrate how to create a 3D cell of a guardrail and then utilize that 3D cell to make a three-dimensional line style, using then that three-dimensional line style to incorporate that into Bentley Civil corridor modeling to be able to use that guardrail on actual construction projects in our modeling environment. So the first step of this is to actually create the 3D cell. The 3D cell is made up of two parts. It's made up of a wooden block, which separates the post from the rail. It's also made up of the post, which goes into the ground and also supports the block and the rail. And then the rail, the third portion, will not be part of the cell, but will be done as part of the template that we would utilize in corridor modeling. And so that's the way we're going to approach this particular project. So the first thing we want to do is make sure we have some microstation levels set up properly. So I have an element template with a level called road guardrail block, and I have a color similar to that of wood. Since the block is going to be wood, we're going to start with the block. And notice right now I'm in a 2D file, and I am doing this for metric because I've already done the imperial. So I wanted to record the metric version of this so that you can easily see how to do this. To construct the 3D cell, I like to start in a 2D file first and construct the top view only. And then once we have that top view only constructed in a 2D file, we'll export to a 3D, and then we will extrude both our block and our post and then set the proper origin. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I want to take advantage of is make sure that you have AccuDraw, MicroStation AccuDraw running, and I have the proper symbology set. So now I'm going to come over to my task, and I'm going to place an orthogonal shape. And my tool settings here, just so that you can see that, I have my area set to solid and my fill type set to none. And I'm just going to randomly pick a place out here, or point in space, where we'll be able to go back and adjust our origin points later. So I'm just going to start drawing, and then I want to put in my dimensions, and I have all my dimensions written down in imperial units, so I just need to do the math here, and I can do that directly with AccuDraw. So my first dimension, I'll let it do the conversion for me. So we're making our wooden block. Come over here. Accept that point. Now, of course, this point's going to be the same symmetrically, so we can pick that for our length. And then that concludes the construction of the block portion. Now we're ready to construct the top view of the steel galvanized post. So I have changed my element template to something appropriate for steel. I'll come back over to my task, and again I'm going to draw an orthogonal shape. And I'm not going to draw them together just yet. I'll move them after I create the top of the steel post. So let's go ahead and make that construction. So I'll start, again, just kind of like I did before, just a point in space. And that completes the top view construction of our guardrail post. Now we can go ahead and move this from this midpoint to that midpoint. So we'll just use our basic microstation move command. And I'm going to snap to my midpoint here. And then we'll snap to our midpoint here. And that concludes then the construction of the top view in 2D. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to now export this to a three-dimensional drawing. So File, Export, 3D. And you can leave the settings as is, top and fixed. And so we'll say OK. And then we will open that file. Do a fit view. And what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to go ahead and open up 3 more views. And we can just do a window or range here. It's fine. Tile, doesn't matter. All right, so what we want to do now is we have our top view here. You can see top. And then on view 2, I'm going to make this one isometric. So we'll do an isometric rotation for view 2, and we'll do a fit. And then on view 3, I'm going to do a right side orientation rotation. So we'll do right view here, and we'll fit that. And then lastly, on actually view 3 we want to be front. I'm going to do a front view here, and we'll do a right view here. The fit view then, and then I want to save those settings. So the next step in the process is to extrude our solids to give them a height. And so to do that, we go to Tools, we go to Solids, and we go to Create Solids by Extrusion. And I'm going to do this in my isometric view. So I'm going to select my block and begin to drag down. And then for the height of the block, according to standard, is there. And then we want to do the same command then for the galvanized steel post. So I'll select that and begin to drag that down. To then give our post a depth. And our Y is 0 here in this particular instance. So we do a fit view now of our isometric, and we can go ahead and at any point I'm going to switch over to, you can go for example to like the illustration mode and begin to see that take place. So now we have essentially our 3D post built, and we want to assign some materials to that if we want to at this point, and we also need to reset the origin. At this point I'm going to go ahead and set the materials just to verify that. So I'll select my block, come over to element information, and you'll see I have a element template set to road guardrail block only with an attached material as flat oak is what I used. And then on the galvanized steel I have a road guardrail post only template applied that has a material called galvanized steel, which gives it a realistic appearance in terms of the three-dimensional model. So we'll do a fit view here and here, and you can see we're getting really close to being done with our cell. So I'm going to do a save settings here, and we'll compress that design. So the next thing we need to do is we need to identify the location of 0, 0, 0 and move our guardrail sail to that particular location. And so to do this, I've just set up a level color style and weight, a heavy line weight no feature definition, and I'm just going to go place a simple microstation line. So line, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to type in xy equals 0, 0, 0 and hit enter, and that takes me to that location. Now I'll go back to my keyend, do an arrow up, and do that again, and then reset. And so now if I actually select this point, look in element information, you'll see that the start and ends points are the same. So it has 0 length, but we'll be able to snap to that when we go to move our guardrail. And so the next part of the process is to locate the location on the guardrail that belongs at 0, 0, 0, so that when we place this, it'll properly line up with the edge of shoulder as well as the existing ground. Now that we have our reference point set at 0, 0, 0, we need to move our guardrail, but we need to move it from a very strategic point. Our guardrail post is 6 feet tall, and we need to find the midpoint of that 6 feet down the post, and we also need to use the midpoint here. And so the easiest way I found to do that is just to do a quick construction that helps us identify that location. And so I'm going to switch over to the wireframe mode first, and then I'm just going to draw a few microstation lines to establish that point. So here along the top, I've got my midpoint set. So I'm going to go midpoint to midpoint on the top, and then I'm going to do the same thing here on the bottom. So we'll do a midpoint to midpoint. Then I'm going to come off of this midpoint and go back to the top. And I'm sure there's many other ways to do this. And at that point, we are actually done with our construction line here, so I can take this and delete it. I don't need that anymore. And then the same thing on the bottom. And what we're interested in is the midpoint of that construction line going to our point of reference 0, 0, 0. And so what we'll do is we're going to put this entire thing in a selection set, and then we'll just use the microstation move command. And I'm going to go find the midpoint of that line. You can see it's about right in this location. So we're going to accept that midpoint. And then I'm going to zoom out here, window out, and we're going to move it to our new point down there. And then when we do a new fit view, we can cancel out of our move command. Now we can come in and actually delete our construction line. We're done with that. And so now we're going to have this point down here that we can use as our cell origin if we want to make a cell, and that coordinate is 0, 0, 0, and then we have our guardrail set at the proper orientation for that cell. And so we'll come back over here and just kind of arrange our views again. And I'm going to set this back to illustration. And then I'm going to save my settings. And then let's go ahead and compress that design to clean that up. And so that is the construction of our guardrail. Now, we will need a left and right cell, but what we'll be able to do is just make copies of this when we go to make our actual cells and rotate that 180 degrees. And so right now, we're just worried about creating the guardrail itself. So we have now this three-dimensional guardrail, and the next step then in the process is to make a left and a right cell of this guardrail that we can then take that cell and create our custom line style. So to begin to prepare for the creation of our 3D line style, we need to have a left and right orientation of this post. And so in this 3D drawing, if we go to our models, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this default model, and I'm going to call this first one, which we've already done essentially the right side of the road. So I'm going to call this 3D guardrail post dash right. We'll say OK. And then I'm going to make another copy. It doesn't really matter at this point which one I copy. 3D guardrail post left. And this is only if you're making something that has a left and right side orientation, and obviously with a guardrail it does. So if we go back to the default here, at this point we can literally go ahead and clean this off because there's nothing here that we need to retain. So we can do an edit, select all, delete. And then we'll come over here to our right side, which we know that is complete. And I'm just going to do a save settings, and we can even compress that design. And then we'll come over to our left side. Now on our left side, what we need to do is we need to put everything in a selection set and rotate it 180 degrees about the reference point 000. And so to do that, all I need to do is to put everything in a selection set. So we can do that right from our top view here. And then we want to do a rotation. And so we'll go to our MicroStation task, and I'm going to select rotate. And we're going to put in the active angle of 180 degrees. So just type in 180, enter. And when it asks us to basically enter a pivot point, I'm going to put in xy equals 0, 0, 0, enter. And then I just do a reset, and now we have everything flipped 180 degrees. I'll clear my selection set, and you can see now we should be good to go. And just to verify, if you snap to your point, it should still be at 0, 0, 0. So we can go ahead then and save those settings, and we'll compress that design as well. So now we have our left and right orientation in our 3D file created, and from there we can proceed to make our custom line style. Now that we have our 3D guardrail constructed and copied over to our left and right models in our 3D file, we're ready to actually create our custom line style. To do that, we're going to come over to Element, Line Styles, Edit, and I'm going to actually just make a new resource file here. So I'm going to navigate to where I'm working. I just call this new and 3D metric guardrail .resource file. And so the first thing we want to do is we want to create the first line style name that the user will actually see. So we'll select Edit, Create, Name, and I'm going to call this 3D Guardrail Post Left for the left side of the road. And we'll hit enter to that. And then we want to actually come in and create our first point. And to finish creating this point, we first have to come over to select the command to place the cell origin, which is here. So define cell origin. And I'm going to type in xy equals 0, 0, 0, enter, and then reset, and that sets it. And then I'm going to put all of this in a selection set. So we now have all of that in a selection set, and I can create now my cell to use for my line style, so my point cell. So we'll create, and we'll type in our left guardrail name. And I'm just going to be consistent here with my name. Say OK to that. And then we'll be given the opportunity then to select that for our point portion. And so let's go ahead and save those changes. The next thing we want to do is to create the stroke pattern. So we'll select stroke pattern here. And what we're going to do on our stroke pattern is we're going to break this and add basically two sections. So we have two sections set up here. Our first section is going to be a length of 0.5 feet, so we need to do the math there. 0.1524 for that second or that first section, and then for the second section we simply touch over here. You can see we have our first and our second section. Actually, we need to add first. So now we have our first section is 0.1524, and then our second section is going to be 5.75 feet, or to convert that to meters is 1.7526. We'll hit enter to that, and so now we have our two sections created. And just to verify, we have fixed, gap, none, and break for that second section, and then for that first section we have again fixed, gap, none, and break, and this is set to distance and unlimited for the stroke. So now that we have the point and we have the stroke, now we need to create our so we'll select edit, create, compound, and we will insert the point. And by the way, let's go ahead and give these points and compounds a name first. So I'm going to go back to my point, and on my point we can go ahead and give this a name. And again, I'm going to be consistent. Guardrail post left for the point, and then for the stroke, I'm just going to call this one, because it'll be used for the both left and right side, call this guardrail stroke. And now we go down to our compound, and this is going to have that same name, 3D guardrail post left. And now we just need to insert those. So we'll find our point first, which is essentially our cell, and then after our point, then we'll insert the stroke portion. And then the last thing that we want to do, a couple of things actually, we want to go to edit and we want to link. So for that compound, which is a combination of the point and the stroke, it needs to be set to that line style. Also, it needs to be set to actual physical size that doesn't get scaled with annotation scales. This is a real geometric piece or feature, so it doesn't need to change size. It's not a piece of text, for example. So we'll set that to physical, and then we will save that. Now, the next thing we want to do basically is just repeat this entire process for the right side. I'm not going to record that again. I think you should hopefully get the gist of that, so I'll go ahead and do that real quick and then come back to the video. So before we exit out of the resource editor, we need to come back to our point for the right and left side and select the base stroke pattern, guardrail stroke, and assign that to that point. And then we'll do the same thing for the other side. We'll assign that and make sure to save those changes. And just to verify, I may have missed a step here, but you want to come on your point, come back to your base stroke pattern and make sure you select this one more time, and you should begin to see now your post. And go ahead and turn off the clip partial, and all of the rest of this is the same. So elements, origin, and then we'll do the same thing over here. So select the right side, okay to that. We'll turn off the clip partial on that point definition, and you should begin then to see your pattern up here on your post. So not going to see it on your stroke, because that is where you define your point, but on your point, when you hit your point section after you select your stroke, then you'll be able to pick in that cell. And then on your compound, you should then also see now your line style showing up. And so we'll go ahead and save those changes to our resource file, and then that will conclude the editing of the custom line style resource file. So we'll close that out, and then we can just do literally a test here. So I'm going to just pick our right side post, and you'll see our line style is now active, and I'll just proceed to draw a microstation line. And you will see then as I draw the right side, I did a little test here previously, but you get the idea, the left and right side drawing appropriately. Just one correction we need to make before we move on. I missed the left and right setting for the point, and so I need to go back to my left. I picked the wrong side, so pick the left, turn off the allow stretch, and pick the right point. Make sure to pick the right side on the right point, and then turn off allow stretch, and then save that one more time. Got my left and right turned around, and it's important to get those right. So we now have our resource file updated, and we are ready to go. One thing to just point out here real quickly, you don't have your material assignments showing up over here like we had set that up. There is right now a restriction with just MicroStation in general, where material assignments on solids for 3D custom line styles are not going to show up. I don't think that it should keep you from setting them up properly, but you would have to actually drop the line styles and use things like Luxology to get that material in there properly for a finalized model. But just so that you understand that that's why they don't show up even though we set them up. Hopefully eventually we'll get that enhancement in there. So the last step before we actually begin to implement the three-dimensional guardrail line style into corridor modeling in our Open Roads technology is we need access to this new line style in our workspace. And the way that I've done this in the examples workspace is put our line styles in a DGN lib. And so I'm going to go open that DGN lib. And again, we have this resource file at this point. We can simply come in to say File, and we want to import. So we want to import the MicroStation resource file to this DGN lib. And so we simply go select the file that we've been working on, which is here. So we'll open that. And it says highlight the names that we want to import. And we'll select import there. And then you will see down in the message center that we've successfully imported those two line styles into the active design file DGN library. And so now we're done with our line style editor completely. And if I come in to simply make or go to a brand new design file, and so just to verify on our line styles, you're going to see we have this 3D guardrail post right and 3D guardrail post left. And so I can pick either one of those, and we have that ready to go into our Open Roads technology and into our element templates. So this concludes the first video that essentially shows how to create a three-dimensional guardrail cell and convert that over then into a custom line style and work that into the workspace. The second portion of this video, or the second part of this exercise, will then be to incorporate this three-dimensional line style into a civil engineering environment such that we can use that for modeling purposes.